Good evening, Kiran. It's very great time to have one of the hot stars in my mind to really, yes, you were in my list of hot stars, to be honest, as young woman architect in this country. I'm very delighted and even pleased that you really agreed to give this interview to me. This is a research which I am trying to carry out to understand lives of women um, who are in this profession of built environment. So the focus is on their life, and the built environment and the profession and the architecture is all at the background. So I have very few questions, very simple questions, and it is meant to flow as a candid conversation with you. And we hope to actually record and publish it in the YouTube, as well as later I wish to also publish it as a document, as a manuscript for women in architecture. We have already decided some name given with some suggestions from previous friends. And I'm just coining the idea of badass woman architect. So let's see. So how it goes. It's still in the thinking period. But with those lines, I would like to also take your permission for recording as well as for publishing, so that I can start my questions from here. Very simple questions.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, Mansee. Happy to do this. And yeah, sure, permission is there. Yeah,
thank you so much. So I'm going to give you a little bit of stress to take you back some years ago, when probably you were in high school. And I would like to know what brought you to architecture? What was going on in your mind or in the family, or what was it like which actually brought you to architecture, and where did you go eventually?
So I think it was actually something very, very simple. And I think maybe that's with a lot of us. You're somebody who can only draw, can't do much else. So you have very limited choices, and also family thinks, acha, now I don't know what she will do. All she can do is she likes
Yes.
to only draw.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's what it was. I was reasonably, I mean, I was okay with studies, but I just absolutely loved my time when I would sit and just draw something. So those were the school years. And I, of course, thought that I would just going forward love to do maybe fine arts. That's what I had in mind. Not that I knew the difference between these professions, but I thought, matlab drawing, so fine arts, you become an artist perhaps, you train to, draw better. But I think my father was not so keen on me joining fine arts. And so we were a family of doctors, and my father was a doctor, but he was always interested in art. So we lived in Bombay. I grew up in Bombay, and he would always take us to Jahangir Art Gallery. Those days, there weren't so many galleries like there are today. No? So Jahangir was there. And I remember our Sunday outings used to be, very frequently we would go to Jahangir. And so art was, so we were exposed to it a little bit. And he felt that, you should do maybe architecture, because then it's not just about drawing. And there would be a little more thought to it. And there would be also some scientific, science subjects. Perhaps you'll do a little more than just be an artist. Now, I, of course, had no idea what the difference was. So my father suggested that we go and meet an architect. Wow. So this was, I think, I was in the 9th standard, and he knew somebody, and he asked this person that, my daughter is thinking what to do. So this acquaintance of my father's, he took us to an architect. He took us to Karigat. I don't know if you've heard of Karigat. Karigat and Associates used to be a firm in Bombay. And Karigat was also a teacher. He used to also teach in Bombay. And so I remember, actually, I really very well remember that encounter with Kharikat. And so I was just sort of walking around the office. I was shown the office, and that's it. I didn't really understand much. But I think at that point, I thought that, okay, if my father wants me to be an architect and I liked what I saw, so it should be okay. So that was it. So I had sort of made up my mind. And then I appeared for my 12th standard, and I remember I got some 80s mein kuch aaya percentage. And everybody at home, you know, because family of doctors, so everybody at home suddenly started to say that, oh, she's, you know, she's got some marks in 80s, maybe she'll get into dentistry. So they were suddenly very hopeful.
Yes.
Dentistry mein mil jayega.
Medical and engineering. that whole fever.
That was the thing. But I was just totally distraught. I kept crying. You know, these people are now going to put me into medicine, and then I will have to read all these books, because we had all these medical books at home. You know, we had a cupboard at home where a lot of my father's books used to be kept, the medical books. And I was just looking at them and sobbing away. So finally they said, okay, you know, you just apply. And so that's what happened. I got into architecture, and at that time there were 3 colleges in Bombay. Academy of Architecture, JJ College, and Raheja. So I joined Academy of Architecture, or Rachna Sansad it's called. And that again was on the advice of this architect whom we knew, because he said that while JJ has a better name and it will give you a degree, at that time Academy had a diploma, 5-year diploma. It did not offer a degree. But he said that, look, if you join Academy, you will have a lot of visiting faculty. And that's very important. So there'll be practitioners who will come and teach. So that's how it got decided. I joined there. And then, of course, I started to work. So this architect was Hafiz contractor who had advised my father. So when I joined architecture, he said that, look, you won't learn anything in college, or at least you won't learn enough. You need to start working very early. So first year of college, I started to work, and I never stopped after that. So I joined his office because he said that, yes, you can come and work with me. And he had about 20 people working for him at that time. So I joined his office, worked there for 20 years, for 2 years. And then kept changing, because I guess, you know, as an architect that, you know, it's a very individualistic profession. Like,
that's also my concern in architecture. Huh? It's very individualistic.
So I kept working with different people, trying to figure out, you know, actually trying to figure out what architecture is. Because I worked in the first office, wasn't sure whether this was architecture. So then I applied somewhere and then worked there for a while, and then worked somewhere else and worked somewhere else. By the time I finished 5 years of architecture, I think I had, including my summer internships, because I was continuously working. By the time I finished, I think I had worked with 6-7 different people.
Interesting.
So by then I had a good idea that, theek hai, you know, there is a wide variety and you can do different things. I think by the time I finished, I thought I knew something till 2 years later. So worked also with Sen Kapadia. We had some very good teachers in college, very, very good teachers. We had Neera Adarkar, who now has set
Yes.
up SEA. She was our teacher, Arvind Adarkar, Dilip Purohit, Hema Sankalya. All these people were our teachers, and Sen Kapadia was teaching us, Subodhay Revan, very good people, very good teachers. So I think PK Das was also there. And Sen Kapadia was very, very encouraging also. So third year or fourth year, I interned with him. And then after graduating, I worked with him for 2 years. And after that, I went to Ahmedabad and worked with Doshi. Now, by then I had worked for 7 years. And suddenly I go to Doshi's office and I realized that I don't know anything about architecture. Very, very disappointing, because
it's a very common thing when you land there.
So yeah, that was the early period.
Interesting, because I can relate also with my life now, because I was also keen in art, but my parents were very clear, coming from a poor background, that what will you earn out of it? So at least do something that can fetch you some employment and money, you know. Interestingly, also in architecture, I had very similar situations where I worked just. So interestingly, even during my 5 years of architecture, I traveled all over India to do all semester break training in Kolkata, in Delhi, in Ahmedabad, and going everywhere, even in my hometown. So every semester break, I was doing this because we had no training period, just to find out what is there. And then the first year, of course, landed at Doshi's office, and then I'm like blank. So it all started from a blank canvas after 5 years. So I can very much relate what you are saying. So I will bring you back to your college days and also, of course, your early years of career. And interesting to know that you were also working right from year one, so which is another thing which I can relate with. I like to, remind you incidents or situations, if you had any. It's not compulsory. Where you realize that being woman in this profession is different, in your early career or in your undergraduate and postgraduate days. So have you had any such incidences where you had to really realize yourself that, okay, there is a gender issue in this profession? Did you feel that? Or because in education, teachers don't make us realize that. It is only when we get out of the school, we do realize. I mean, I know, I don't know about your time, but when I was in undergraduate, all the girls in the class were in the top. But then when you come out of the school, you see completely different scenario. Did you really get this kind of situation? But because Mumbai is different, so I'm curious.
No, but I did experience that. Fortunately for us, when we were in college, so this was, I graduated in 1988. So the period that I was doing my undergraduate course was 1983 to 88. Somehow our batch, and we were 60 in a class, our batch was 50% girls and 50% boys. And even then, we all of us thought that it was unusual, because 50% was like super nice. And so we were very proud of ourselves as a class, that, wow, like in our class, we have half. You all also had that?
Was it discussed like that you are in good, good proportion, or what? It is very competitive? We had very similar situation. In fact, even today, Indian colleges have that kind of statistics. What worries me is that things change afterwards, after undergrad.
Yeah. So it did change. Actually, it changed even before I graduated. So like I said, I started working in the first year itself. And what happened was that when I went and joined the office, there were 20 people and I was the only girl.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
Already
already. And I remember very well that I immediately changed the way I would dress, because I was very conscious that I was going to office, although the people were very, very nice. I mean, they were very nice to me, very friendly, very nice to me. But
probably over nice to you being the only woman. That's also a
possibility. Probably they were very caring, very nice people. But I definitely used to feel uncomfortable, because what used to happen is, and the way the office was set up was, it was one common room. You know, everybody sat in the same space. Now, what used to happen is, after 6 o'clock, you know, clients would stop coming, and you know, all outward external people would stop coming. So we would just be by ourselves, and the boys would invariably, their conversation would change. You know, they would start talking about some office hours, and you know, there would be a lot of that conversation going on, which would make me very uncomfortable. I would just be totally lost. So yeah, it was a very, very difficult time. I wouldn't want to listen to all this conversation, because they would be joking and making fun of people who had come, mostly, you know, girls and women who had come. Because it was, I think, now when I look back at it, I realized that, well, it was probably their way of chilling or what, I don't know. But it used to make me very uncomfortable. And I used to find it very difficult to focus listening to this conversation, but I had to sit there and finish my job and then leave. So it used to be hard. I remember the early days, I would come home and I used to cry a lot, because I didn't want to sit and listen to this. And my sister would, you know, pacify me and say, no, you have to do this job. You have to go back tomorrow. So yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, because certain things men also do not realize around us. And because nowadays I also work in gender, I stress more on that we need more training for men than women for gender sensitization. But then you learn it by doing.
Absolutely, you're right. They didn't realize that it was affecting me, and I didn't, you know, I just kept it to myself, but it used to make me uncomfortable.
I had a very strange situation that most of my boys' friends in those days, they never considered me as girl. They considered me as a boy only. And that also made it very difficult. But then, you know, in young age, you don't realize that something is getting compromised. You tend to really become them to enjoy the situation and, you know, just not make a fuss out of it. But then once you become more sensitive about these issues, things become very different. And also we see in many architecture offices and all, I see that the time is not really respecting our unlimited conversation. It is going with the 40-minute format. So we will join with the same link afterwards, and we will edit this part. But I like to quickly take one more question, and I think the time should be enough. When you slipped into a family mode of life in the profession, how were really you were seeing your life from there, you know, because being an architect, and I don't know whether you started teaching right in the beginning or you were just practicing. What was your early career like, and how you were dealing it with the family life then?
So early career was when I finished working at Doshi's. I one day, you know, went and told him that I want to go back to Bombay because I'm homesick. And of course, Doshi didn't like that. He was very upset. But I had sort of...
Which year was this?
I joined there end of 91, and 93 was when I was heading back. Yeah, I wanted to go back to Bombay. I think I was just homesick. I don't know why. I mean, for 2 years, I'd been absolutely fine, but suddenly I wanted to go back. So I went back, and I think that's when I finally felt that, yes, I could start my practice. Unlike my other classmates, I took a long time.
Yeah. I
kept working a lot, working with other people. So I think in 93, 94, I think I started my own practice in Bombay. By 96, I was married. so now a lot of things were, after that, I think it was all very much linked. Everything that I did was very much linked to my personal life. All my decisions, everything sort of got connected to that a lot. So 96, actually for a brief period, I was in the Netherlands. 95, I don't know, Mansee, if you, I also went to IHS for a little while, but only for the workshop.
Senior. You are my senior then.
It was, I only went for a workshop course. Those days, they used to have those 5-month workshops.
Yeah, I did 1 year that UMD 4. I'm UMD 4.
That was which year was that?
That was very recent. Not recent now. It's already 12 years. So 2007-8.
So Jan to June 96, I was there. And then, so 96, I got married. And my husband was at that time studying in Germany. So from Netherlands, I finished the course and then I went to Germany. We were there for a year till he finished. And then we came back. When we came back, he was from Visakhapatnam. So he said that, I don't like Bombay, so we're not going to live in Bombay. Would that be okay with you? And I said, yeah, it's absolutely okay with me. Now, I was one of those super confident Bombayites. I had no idea what life outside Bombay was.
Bombay is, yeah.
I had absolutely no idea. There's a certain, I think, very strange confidence that Bombayites have.
Yes, so I think that's a metro city confidence,
Yeah, which holds you in good stead. I mean, it comes in useful always.
Yes, of course.
So we started to live in Visakhapatnam from 96 onwards, and Visakhapatnam at that time was not so big. I mean, today also it's not so big, but at that time it was not so big at all. And I would find fault with everything, I would say, "Arey, yahan pe post office mein koi queue mein nahi khada rehta hai," and I would order some envelopes and say these envelopes are so badly made, So not realizing that there were certain things that we took for granted in Bombay. So I think alongside having a family life, I think this whole change of city was a big thing in my life. A big thing.
That's a big thing in every woman's life, when they change place. And also they change family. We all change family also, no?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a North Indian and I married into a South Indian family. So it was a huge change, culture thing. And also my husband said that, I am going to be working in the village. So I want to be in rural development for some time. And I said, sure, we'll both do that. So we actually started our life in a small place, which was 1 hour from Visakhapatnam. And so we were part of an NGO, and I was actually struggling to do some architecture related work there. But that didn't really happen. So I sort of tried finding out what I could do, put up a proposal to HUTCO for a building center. I was quite fascinated with mud architecture. And so I thought, okay, maybe we will set up a building center here. We sent them a proposal. We didn't hear from them for a long time. And so I thought, okay, this is not happening. I came back to Visakhapatnam and the proposal got approved. But then I didn't go back. I didn't go back. I thought, okay, now I have started. So my husband continued there for 3 years and he would come on the weekends. And I came back to Vizag and I set up my office there. So I think that was officially my first, I had an office of my own. So it was a home come office. That's how it started. And then we were there in Visakhapatnam for about 6-7 years. Things went very well, actually. I think I slowly realized that being outside of Bombay was a huge advantage, actually.
Yeah, interesting to see some overlaps already, right from childhood to how you were talking about how change of place and in getting into marriage and starting new career, especially new office, are all interesting factors. But apart from the struggles, they also come with a lot of learning. So I mean, that's something which we can always carry forward, because that's important. So that brings me to the next question of our discussion is, I would like to know some incidences in your career in all these years where you were actually uh, facing certain things which change the course of your life. Of course, marriage also changes the course of life. You already mentioned that the change of city also changed the course of life. But if we have to really focus only, let's say, in the way profession has shaped you over these years, would you like to remind something and tell us something that changed the way you practice today, or something that really helped you or triggered you to do things in certain manner, or you learn something that this is what thing for me. Hatko is a very good example that you were already quoting, that it was a break, first break, even if you didn't choose to do it,
Yeah. So actually, I think I was, as you were saying, I was, I don't know if it was taking risk, or I would just call it experimenting a lot. Lot of experimenting all the time. So I am not sure if there was any one thing, but I think there were lots and lots of experiments all along the way. And I think at every stage, each of these things changed the way I was thinking from there on. Yeah, so everything was adding on.
Was gender coming into your, the course of your practice, and what after Vizag, because you are not right now in Vizag.
Yeah, so actually we lived in a lot of different cities, and that was again a lot of change, because I wanted to be, I mean, especially when you've I think especially in your early years, all you can think of is that you want to be a designer, right? You
Yes.
see yourself as a designer. I mean, that's
unfortunately or fortunately, because I think that's why how we are limited in our profession also, and the more we are getting exposure and learning, we are realizing that the boundaries are not there actually in the profession. And I know your work very well, so I mean we can relate with it.
So yeah, just like everybody else, for a long time, all I wanted was to be a designer. And I think that being a designer meant obviously that you had to have a design practice, right?
Also build something,
Build something. So fortunately, I did get a chance in Visakhapatnam to do all that, because like I said, I suddenly realized that there were certain things that might not have been possible in Bombay, which suddenly became possible there because it was a smaller place. So for example, I used to just initiate proposals, and I would, in Visakhapatnam, for example, I would, write up a 2-page proposal on how street design should be, just out of my head. And then I would walk into the municipal commissioner's office and tell the PA there that, I have this letter. And because it was a smaller place, and I'm sure in Bombay this would have never happened, these people used to actually call me back and say that you left a letter and we'd like to discuss this. And I actually got commissioned to do all of those proposals that I was, taking to them. Yeah.
That's where I see a difference in the way I also wrote a lot of proposals. I can't even count how many proposals I wrote in my life. But you are right that a place also matters, because when we sit in a big city like Ahmedabad or of course in Mumbai, Delhi, these proposals are, not having so much of weight as compared to if you are in a smaller cities. So I can very
Where
much
were your
relate.
early years, Mansee?
All
Where
in
were your early
Ahmedabad,
years?
all in Ahmedabad. And once you are in Ahmedabad, you are actually a peanut butter here when you have these all, big shots sitting here. I have written tremendous amount of proposals and I can very much relate with it. And I feel good that you actually managed to operationalize those proposals. And you are already giving credit to the place, which is interesting to see.
No, so it was definitely the place. In fact, in terms of being commissioned, it worked. I would get commissioned to do it. I would get paid for the work done. But in terms of implementation, I was not very successful. And that ultimately disappointed me, that I did not know how to, I did not know how to work within, so these were all government projects, right? So municipal commissioner, I went to the district collector number of times, and the district collector, the then district collector, gave me a lot of tourism projects. And that was for me, again, just another bag of experiments. I was enjoying myself thoroughly. But what was definitely happening is that what was coming out on site. So, you had to, of course, the senior people would talk to you for half an hour, sanction something, and then you had to work with the executive engineer. And you had to work with, the assistant engineer. And I was struggling there. So implementation was not so great. It would get implemented, but something else would be coming up.
Yes, because they know they have certain language of operation.
So, but it still went on. I mean, I didn't stop. And, because you were asking about how it was to be a woman, I remember, I mean, there have, I think, because you're making us think about it, Mansee, there have been, I realize, people, many of them have been women who have been very strong women who have backed you up. There have also been men who were very sympathetic to us because we were women, very appreciative of the fact that as a woman, you want to do something.
Make an effort, yes, you are making an effort.
I remember there was, so while I was in Vizag, another proposal was that there was there was this place called Bimli Patnam. It was 25 kilometers from Vizag. 25 kilometers is just half an hour away. So it was a Dutch settlement, an old Dutch settlement. It was also the second oldest municipality of the country. You've heard of Bimli Patnam?
Yes, that's. I was in Visakhapatnam this year only, but I had heard about it because of Netherlands.
So I started writing emails to the Netherlands embassy saying that there is a Dutch settlement here and maybe, you should think about doing something. And nobody replied. And I kept writing emails for 8 months. And finally, the person who was in charge of cultural affairs, maybe you knew him at that time, Dr. Robert Arce was there.
No. I know the current cultural affairs for official.
And Dr. Robert Arce was extremely, extremely nice. So he finally replied to my mail and they called saying that, you've been writing to us. So they came down and they decided to support this Bimli Patnam project. And he sanctioned a conservation workshop. So a conservation workshop happened and we invited professionals from all over the country actually who were working in conservation, and urban planners came. So a couple of urban planners came from SP Shore, came from Hyderabad. Banashri Banerjee came from Delhi. No, she was in Vizag. She was in Vizag at the time. And we had Manish Chakrabarti came from Calcutta. So we had some people who were already working in heritage who came. the reason why I'm remembering this is that Dr. Robert Arce, I remember, when the whole thing ended, this thing took about 2 months of preparation. And when the workshop ended, there was a dinner that evening. And I remember he met my husband for the first time. And he went up to my husband and said that, I must thank you because knowing that y'all are in South India and how things are in India, I think you've been extremely nice to to allow your wife to do this, and we are so grateful. So he was busy, appreciating, and that was extremely nice. I still remember that evening when Dr. Arce was actually so appreciative of the fact that he had allowed me to do this. So there were people like that. And I think, actually even later, I've had clients who are women who've been very supportive. I remember there was a client in Bombay. It was actually a husband and wife team, but this lady was very, very supportive. There was another client in Hyderabad. So later, after Visakhapatnam, we moved to Hyderabad, and there was another client. She was this group, Nagarjuna group. She was from the Nagarjuna family, and she had done a degree in education. So they wanted to set up, a chain of 24 schools across Andhra Pradesh. And they wanted me to do a prototype for these schools. And because she was a woman, I think the whole interaction was very different because she was herself, working in this world of men, and she was supporting me very, very nicely. So I think all along, maybe there have been a lot of women.
Yeah, you both could also understand the nuances
and then later
of the project,
Yeah, then later, Mansee, there was, I was doing some work for CRISIL. CRISIL had this infrastructure advisory group, and I was doing a lot of tourism planning projects with them. There again, there was a lady, Jayanti Ramchandran. She was a management consultant who was working with them. I think if I did work with CRISIL, it was thanks to her, because she was very professional. Although we were women, she would never have conversations with me which were very personal or informal. It was always a very professional relationship. But I think when I look back on it, she was making a lot of things possible for me because she understood that she really, I think, went out of her way to make things happen. So yeah, I think there have been a lot of women actually who have been very nice.
That's been very important to also learn, as well as it's very nice of you that you acknowledge those people who have also helped you chart your life goals, what you are doing today. So where did you go after Hyderabad?
You're making us think about it. I suddenly realized.
Yeah, but that's part of this conversation, I mean, we are retrospecting into what we are today, and that's how we will learn where we are. So I'm now curious, because I'm also deviating from the gender thing, because I'm seeing this woman is traveling from a place A to place B to C, and now from Hyderabad, where did you go? And with this, I would like to also pose one little question on if you had situations where you were really made to realize that you are a woman, how had you really faced it and changed that situation into pleasant working thing? Maybe just one example. I'm sure you have faced these situations. I'm hearing a lot of encouraging things from you, but I know when you reach this kind of journey in life, it's not that journey of roses. It's always there also. So maybe something where you actually managed to counter a situation where you were made to realize that you were a woman. And where did you go after Hyderabad? I'm curious now.
Yeah, I'll probably share this one instance first, and then come back to Hyderabad. So there was this rural tourism what was it called? Rural tourism scheme or something, which Government of India had floated, under which 12 craft-based villages were being selected. And this was being done by Government of India, but UNDP got involved. And UNDP then was doing what they were calling the software component or capacity building, and Government of India was doing the hardware component or the infrastructure development. So as part of that, we were taken on as UNDP. I started off from Government of India side. I mean, from at that time we were in Hyderabad from AP government side, but then UNDP said we will like to have the architects as our consultants. And then once we finished one project, we did one project in Hyderabad, close to Hyderabad, Pochampalli. But after that, they sanctioned, they asked, not sanctioned, but UNDP asked me to get involved with 2 more projects, which were in Tamil Nadu. These were spice tourism projects. They were trying to create a spice tourism circuit. And I remember I went for a site visit. And again, there were municipal engineers. So now these were spice tourism sites. They were spectacular in terms of scenic beauty, but they were also very far out. And so there was this place called Kurangini. That is where we were going to do one of the projects. And the engineer said that, look, you can do the base. So it was a hill. And he said, you can visit the hill ka base part, and then we will take you in the car to the top part, and it'll all get done very quickly. So they were basically wanting to, and I'm not sure actually, Mansee, if it was, I'm not sure if it was because I was a woman or what. I'm not sure, but he said it won't take too long. It'll all get done fast. But I had been told that there was also, so it was called middle station, top station, and bottom station or something. Those were the names that the place used to. And I said, what about the middle station? He said, no, middle station you cannot access because, we can't go there by car. Now, I don't know whether he was trying to put me off and he thought, ye kahan se karegi and all that. He said, we can't go by car. It is only possible by walk. So I said, acha, theek hai, we'll walk. He said, no, madam, you will not be able to do it. It is a 14-kilometer trek. So I said, okay, we will do. So then we went and we did this 14-kilometer, means it was 7 kilometers and 7 kilometers, a total of 14. We did that. And I think probably was my only experience where somebody was trying to, put off something. Otherwise, I think I've not had really, it's been more or less okay.
Yeah, because it's also, I think the way you have handled your project, as you rightly mentioned, that many of the projects you had initiated and you got it. So that's also, which makes a huge difference, the entry point of the professional, that makes a huge difference. I think so. You were also talking about engineers, and that always keeps me very curious. When in this country we are going to have city engineers who also women, I would love to study them because that may also change the entire scene of the cities and the way cities are built around. And that brings me to another interesting question. And it's the only tricky question as well as a professional question. I would like you to imagine a situation. I'm sure you do have a very good career path, but I'm sure you are also aware of the situations that women architects face in this country. I mean, we are already extinct species in terms of practicing architect, but not in terms of professional, ventures. So many of the women have gone into different fields. So I like you to imagine a situation where it's a flip thing, like more women architects, urban designers, planners are in the decision making, are leading, are the masters. just change the situation in the country at this moment. And I like you to imagine how cities would have been then. If all the leading architects, planners, designers, city engineers were all led by women, I'm not saying there are no men, but then led by women and decisions were taken by women, what will be the cities like? Do you see that cities will be different if it is more women decision makers, designers, architects, and planners, and how that will be? This is my only professional question, by the way, in the entire list.
So Mansee, I don't know actually if, I must say that, we do sort of face some difficulties because we are women, but I don't think I have thought about that much. So I don't think I have seen myself or my women colleagues as being any different in their thinking or in what is possible for them to do. And so I find it, it's not so easy for me to answer this because I don't sort of differentiate between a woman's way of thinking and a man's way of thinking about architecture.
It should be like this. Yeah.
Or about cities. I think it's the same.
Okay. No, it's up to you.
As a professional, I think it's the same.
Yeah.
As a professional, it's the same.
Yeah, because often this gets mixed up with masculinity and femininity, whereas women and men is not limited to masculinity and femininity. Often this question gets mixed up with that. But just to elaborate a little bit more, don't you feel that the way we are building cities, the way we are going further with all decisions are very much masculine, and they need little bit of rethinking and reorientation in terms of softening the way we are doing urban developments, or we are taking decisions for anything and everything? Or do you think that it's going right? Or personally, it's my probably assumption that if there were more women in decision making positions, many of the things would have been much better placed, especially in urban scenarios, in development scenarios, than the men taking the decisions. If you don't think like this, I'm absolutely fine. It's up to the way you have, experienced your life. And that's also the richness of this conversation, that I get to meet people who have very different experiences.
So I think, Mansee, while I don't see, cities being the way they are, or urban development going in a certain way because there are more men in the decision making setup, I do think that our cities need to be, and this is something that I'm currently trying very hard to work towards. I do think that cities are not people-centric, that we need empathetic cities. Let's say not people-centric, but empathetic cities. And I think that that comes with including people in conversations about making these decisions about cities. And I think for me, it's not so much about should we include more women in the conversation.
Yeah, it's genderless.
It's genderless. I think we're just not involving people in any decision making. And that is something I definitely very strongly feel that needs to change. And all the more because now I think with the pandemic having happened and all of us having realized that, we are moving away from nature, we are not doing, so our focus is just so much on technology and infrastructure development that we are not realizing that our neighborhoods are not really catering to people. They're just catering to the car.
Not livable at all, actually. And what all was required in the pandemic time was a good neighborhood to go out and breathe some fresh air, especially in the metro cities. Yeah, it's good to learn this side of perception about things, because when people like me who are going beyond to look at why decisions are like this, and when we look at the gender count, we tend to make this assumption that cities are like this because more men are sitting in those positions and taking those decisions. But I completely respect your point that it can be anybody. It's just the way of life. So basically, our humility probably for humanity has to increase more, whether it is man or woman or whoever is in the decision making position. But ironically, numbers cannot be denied. So more and more men are in those decision making positions, and that cannot be denied. So that stands its own position. But I completely understand your point of view. And also that because now you are not only a designer, which you wanted to be in the beginning, you are a researcher, you are an educator, you are a public speaker. How did you really switch into this mode? And maybe then I move to our last question from here. And how do you really enjoy it now? I mean, and manage all those things together. I know a little bit about your work, but I'm completely fascinated with the way you have actually married, I will say, urban design with social work and also education and all. The Everyday City Lab. Did you really start doing the Everyday City Lab from Vishakhapatnam, or is it something which you evolved over time?
So the Everyday City Lab was actually set up only 4 years ago.
Okay.
And yeah, it's very recent, and it was actually came about because of what I studied. What was my research in my PhD? So in 2011, I had registered for a PhD at SET, which I finished, I think, in 2017.
Okay.
And for the PhD, I was focusing on informality in public spaces. So it was an urban design PhD. I was focusing on informality, trying to understand everyday practices of people and looking at tactics and strategies. That is what my definition was. But while I was doing the PhD, I realized that that was one definition of everyday practice, that I needed another definition. It was not enough to understand everyday practices as tactics and strategies, that in the Indian context, there were social practices, there were cultural, economic, political, and religious practices, and these needed to be studied. So I started to do summer winter schools at SEP as a way to experiment again. That was nice. Yet another experiment. And I thought, okay, PhD was still going on, and I was busy experimenting because I was like, oh, this everyday practices that I'm studying as tactics and strategies is not enough. I need to also understand it from the other side. And now, as you know, Mansee, in PhD, once you focus, you have a research question, you're only supposed to do that. You can't be jumping and doing something else. But this was happening outside of the PhD, and I was satisfying myself because
feed into
PhD could talk about tactics, strategies.
It could feed into.
So this started to happen, and it could feed into, but then I was not allowed to bring it in. So that started to happen, and I think when I finished the PhD, I realized that this was so fascinating that I could be doing it for next 20 years. So that's how I decided to set up the lab.
Very simple but personal question. You may choose not to take it, but do you think having having an independent profession from a spouse actually help you emerge as an independent professional? Because I do have people who have joint practice, and so I am also trying to understand these layers, where what happens when you have a joint practice, when you have an independent practice, basically when you have a different profession, also when you have same profession but different practice. Do you think that also matters in our relationship and profession?
For me, I think this was like, having my husband and I having different professions, for me was very important. I was more comfortable with this
Very good.
because
You
I
answered
couldn't.
already.
Yeah, so I was more comfortable, but I must say that I right from the beginning I have discussed my work all the time with my husband, and I don't see myself not doing that because work was everything. Architecture was
Yes,
everything for me,
yes, we are
right? It was my
totally
whole
agree.
world.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
can
So
imagine
it
that.
has been, I think I've been very, very fortunate that I had a partner, I have a partner who is as excited to talk about these things with me. He understands all of that. We are able to have that conversation. But I'm very glad that, we are different professions.
You have some richness of conversation also. Otherwise, there was a time in life when we were just eating, sleeping, and talking and walking all the time the same thing because we were in that same box and same kind of endeavor. So that way, you must be
Actually,
having richness.
I must add here that it also, I mean, I was questioned at home itself a lot about, there was a lot of criticism also. And it was pointed out to me that I had a very limited understanding because our education is all completely visual, right?
Yes.
So somewhere along the line, Mansi, I developed a course called Architecture for Non-Architects. And there were
Oh wow, we have to do
two
this then.
reasons. There were two reasons. One was, of course, that I was constantly interacting with people who were non-architects within the family, but also because these officials whom I had met, over the years, government officials, I would, after some point, just reach a dead end with them, and I would
Yeah.
think, Hare, they're just not getting it. And so I was harboring this idea in my head for many, many years, for 10 years almost, that, we need to do this. We
It's
need to
very
have.
important, huh? Very important, because many people still don't know the profession. Ironically, we in the profession also limit the profession in certain manner, that this is architect. And more I'm meeting women and I'm realizing that the boundaries of architecture is really, really vast as compared to what we see even in the profession. Forget about outside the profession. That brings me to the last question, and that's a very simple question. That message you would like to give to the younger generation: no gender bars, so all boys and girls, because we know the gender has really made a huge difference in last 20 years. You may not have faced it. People like me have faced it. That's why we are into this kind of research also to understand how to really improve things and all. And you being now teacher, educator, and researcher and in the field also working with non-architects, what kind of message would you like to give to really ensure that every woman or every man for that matter also gets this kind of experience what you have experienced, as like not so much of gender fuss in the profession and focus on the profession itself? Any message for the younger generation how to take the profession further? But of course gender is my concern, so I'm just asking that, but you are free to answer.
Yeah, so I think I would say that this is particularly for, young women, but it's applicable to everybody. I think because what happened, I mean, the way our lives panned out, it's quite possible that for other women also, their lives
Yes.
will pan out similarly.
Yes.
That you have to multitask, you might have to move
Yes.
cities, you might have to adjust to a lot of things, you have to keep changing yourself. But I think that, you should just take a lot of joy in
Yes.
starting a new experiment. Treat everything like a new experiment. And as they say, it's always possible to connect the dots. So that's
Yeah,
what I've
absolutely.
learned. That initially I didn't believe that. I mean, if somebody had told me, it's possible to connect the dots, I would have been very annoyed.
No,
But
but we
now
can do it. We can do it now after 20 years, 25 years, But then if we can tell this to younger generation, they will be more comforted than feeling this discomfort of struggling, I mean, like you have been working on a particular area and going ahead, and now you can relate all of them and bring it together. Like I'm trying to do something with water and trying to bring them together. So we'll have to find and connect these things, and that's very interesting and also nice way. And it's really wonderful to read from your experience that you actually experienced a situation where gender was not coming in the way of your profession. And that's very encouraging also for others to see, because trust me, it is still a very serious issue in the country in this profession, whether by position, whether by practice on the ground, whether by decisions, whether even from personally and professionally, both ways. So you are indeed privileged, but you are also, of course, you have worked hard. There is no doubt on that, and you have made your life there. I'd like to thank you again for agreeing for this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Kiran, and I look forward to future work with you. Thank you.
Mansee, it was very nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We can connect outside this. Yeah, thank you very much. Please take care of yourself, and I see you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.